There are women in history whose names still echo with By 1527, Henry was seeking an annulment from Catherine, claiming that their marriage was invalid because she had previously been married to his brother. The Pope refused, but Henry was not a man who took no easily. He began a process that would shake Europe to its core, breaking from the Catholic Church, declaring himself the supreme head of the Church of England, and divorcing Catherine so he could marry Anne. The once devout Catholic king had defied the Pope for her, It was, in every sense, a political earthquake. For 6 long years, Anne waited, enduring gossip, hatred, and public scorn as the woman blamed for tearing apart the royal marriage. To her enemies, she was a homewrecker, a witch, even a heretic. But behind the headlines of the Tudor court, there was something more human. A woman navigating an impossible situation, her fate intertwined with the desires of a man who was growing more dangerous by the day. Finally, in 1533, after years of secret correspondence and hidden meetings, Anne's patience was rewarded. Henry married her in secret, and she was crowned Queen of England at Westminster Abbey. The crowds were massive, but the cheers were mixed. For many, she was an intruder wearing another woman's crown. And in that moment of triumph, the seeds of her downfall had already been planted. Anne Boleyn's coronation should have been the height of her triumph, the moment when ambition and destiny finally aligned. Yet even as the golden crown was placed on her head, dark murmurs echoed through the crowd. The people had adored Queen Catherine, and many saw Anne not as a rightful queen, but as an interloper, the woman who had broken England's most sacred marriage. Still, Anne stepped into her new role with confidence and energy. She was not a queen who blended into the background. She was opinionated, intelligent, and politically aware. She spoke her mind to Henry, challenged his advisors, and even involved herself in foreign policy and church reform. To Henry, this was thrilling at first. The fiery woman who had defied the Pope with him now shared his vision of a new England, free from Rome's control. But power in Tudor England was fickle, especially for women. And Anne's boldness, the same quality that had once captivated Henry, soon began to threaten him. Her most pressing task as queen was to produce a son. In an age where a woman's worth was tied entirely to her ability to bear heirs, Anne knew that her survival depended on giving Henry what Catherine could not, a healthy male child. When she became pregnant soon after her marriage, Henry was ecstatic. He was so sure the child would be a boy that letters and preparations for the birth of a prince were already being written before she gave birth. But on September 7, 1533, Anne gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth. Henry's initial disappointment was thinly veiled, but Anne reassured him. "The next one," she said confidently, "will be a son." And for a while, Henry believed her. He doted on his daughter, and Anne remained the center of the royal universe. Her quick wit and sophistication charmed foreign ambassadors, and her patronage of scholars and reformers made her a symbol of the new Protestant England. But beneath the polished surface, resentment was brewing. The old nobility hated her. The common people whispered that God was punishing England for allowing her to replace Catherine. And at court, enemies watched her every move, none more dangerous than Henry's powerful advisor, Thomas Cromwell. Cromwell had once been Anne's ally, working with her to reform the church and redirect its wealth. But when Anne began opposing his plans to seize monastic lands for the crown, their alliance fractured. Cromwell was ruthless and patient, and he understood one thing better than anyone: the king's heart could turn as swiftly as the wind. Anne suffered several miscarriages after Elizabeth's birth, one of which, according to reports, occurred after she saw Henry injured in a jousting accident and believed he was dead. Each loss widened the rift between them. The once all-consuming love affair that had defied the church began to decay under pressure, jealousy, and Henry's growing impatience. He began to look elsewhere. Among Anne's ladies-in-waiting was a quiet, gentle young woman named Jane Seymour. Unlike Anne, Jane was docile, traditional, and obedient. Everything Anne wasn't. Henry began sending her gifts in secret. Anne knew what that meant. She had once been the other woman herself. Now she was the wife whose shadow someone else was stepping into. Her temper, once fiery and charming, became unpredictable. She argued with Henry in public, accused him of infidelity, and even mocked his manhood. To a king already uneasy about his power, these were fatal mistakes. Cromwell, ever the opportunist, saw his moment. He began to build a case against Anne. Not a legal one at first, but a psychological one. He whispered poison into Henry's ear, that Anne was faithless, manipulative, and dangerous, that she might even plot against him. The king's paranoia did the rest. Soon, every innocent word or gesture at court became evidence. A court musician who admired Anne's grace, a nobleman who laughed too warmly in her presence. Cromwell twisted it all into a story of adultery, treason, and witchcraft. The queen who had rewritten England's destiny was now being rewritten herself into a villain. By April 1536, the trap was complete. Anne was accused of committing adultery with 5 men, including her own brother, George Boleyn. The charges were absurd. One of the supposed affairs was said to have taken place while Anne was pregnant, another when she was hundreds of miles away from the alleged lover. But in Henry's court, truth was irrelevant. When Anne was arrested and taken to the Tower of London, she didn't plead or weep. She laughed. According to witnesses, she said, "I am the king's true wedded wife. I have done no wrong." Those who saw her that day remarked that she was calm, even regal, as though she understood the game was already lost. Inside the tower, she was lodged in the same royal apartments where she had once awaited her coronation. Now she waited for her death. Her trial was held in May. It was a spectacle, attended by nobles and courtiers who once bowed before her. Anne defended herself with poise and clarity, refuting every charge with logic and wit. Even her enemies were impressed. But the verdict had been written long before the trial began. She was found guilty of adultery, incest, and treason. The punishment, death by burning or beheading, at the king's discretion. Henry, ever merciful in appearance, chose beheading and ordered a French swordsman to ensure it would be clean and quick. Just 3 years after she had been crowned queen, Anne Boleyn, the woman Henry once called the only one I have ever truly loved, was condemned to die. The morning of May 19, 1536, was cool and silent over the Tower of London. A small crowd gathered near the scaffold, nobles, guards, and a few courtiers who had once adored her, but now came to witness her end. The air was heavy with dread, the gray sky pressing down as if even heaven disapproved of what was about to happen. Anne Boleyn walked to her execution, dressed in a simple dark gray gown lined with crimson, the color of martyrdom. Over her shoulders she wore a red cloak and a small linen cap, under which her famous dark hair was neatly bound. She carried herself with grace, her chin high, her steps measured. The French swordsman, brought from Calais for this moment, waited quietly beside the block. Anne climbed the steps of the scaffold, turned to face the crowd, and spoke clearly. "Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, according to law, and by the law I am judged to die. I pray God save the king and send him long to reign over you." She never confessed to the crimes laid against her. Instead, she forgave those who had condemned her. Her calmness unnerved those who watched. She seemed almost serene, as though she had transcended the fear that had haunted her final days. As she knelt upon the straw, her ladies-in-waiting wept quietly. One covered her eyes with a blindfold. The executioner stepped forward, raised his sword, and with one swift stroke, it was over. Anne Boleyn was 35 years old. Her body was hastily placed in an old arrow chest and buried beneath the floor of the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, within the tower. No monument, no inscription, only silence. The woman who had changed the course of English history was erased within moments of her death. But history does not stay silent forever. Henry remarried to Jane Seymour just 11 days later. The king moved on, the court shifted, but Anne's ghost never left England. Rumors spread that her spirit walked the tower corridors, that her headless figure rode through the night at Hever Castle, that her eyes still glowed with fury. In death, she became legend. Yet for centuries, her reputation remained poisoned. Chroniclers, most of them men writing under royal patronage, painted her as deceitful, ambitious, and immoral. They described her as a witch who had bewitched the king's mind, even implying that her daughter Elizabeth was the product of sorcery. Her supposed seductive beauty became part of the myth. Dark eyes, long neck, dangerous smile. Artists painted her as the archetype of the femme fatale. But these portrayals weren't truth. They were propaganda, an artistic punishment that ensured history would remember her as a temptress rather than a victim. In reality, the few surviving descriptions of Anne suggest something quite different. She was not the exaggerated vixen that later portraits made her out to be. According to those who actually knew her, she was elegant, slender, and expressive. She had olive-toned skin, straight dark hair, and eyes so large and dark that one contemporary wrote they invited to conversation. Another described her as having a small mouth and a long, graceful neck. By Tudor standards, she was not a traditional beauty, but her charisma, her wit, and her ability to command attention made her magnetic. She was the kind of person whose presence filled a room. And that, more than anything, was what made her dangerous in the eyes of men who preferred their women silent. For centuries, historians recycled the Tudor-era lies that defined her, that she was vain, calculating, a usurper. But in the modern age, a different picture has begun to emerge. Through letters, records, and even physical reconstructions, historians have rediscovered Anne Boleyn as she truly was. A woman of courage and intellect who paid the ultimate price for ambition in a world that offered her no room to breathe. In recent years, forensic artists and historians have worked to recreate her face using descriptions, portraits painted within her lifetime, and 3D analysis of surviving sculptures and jewelry. The result is striking: a woman with strong cheekbones, a confident gaze, and a quiet intelligence behind her eyes. Not a seductress, but a survivor. When we look into that reconstructed face, we no longer see a villain. We see someone human, a woman who dared to challenge the boundaries of her time, who believed she could shape her destiny, and in doing so, changed the destiny of England forever. Because while Henry VIII's 6 wives have all become chapters in his story, Anne Boleyn is the one who reshaped the narrative. Her daughter, Elizabeth, would go on to become one of the greatest monarchs in English history, the Virgin Queen, under whom England entered its golden age. Anne never lived to see it, but her spirit lived through Elizabeth, the daughter of the scapegoat queen. 5 centuries later, we can finally see her clearly, not as the seductress, not as the scapegoat, but as the woman who stood at the heart of one of history's most seismic revolutions. Her legacy is not her fall, it's her defiance. Her true face is not the one painted by enemies or altered by rumor. It is the face of conviction, courage, and consequence. Anne Boleyn wasn't destroyed because she was evil. She was destroyed because she was powerful. And power, when it comes from a woman, has always been the most dangerous sin of all.